Okay, well, just I want to pick up first on one thing that Ludo said. Um, he mentioned that there are 800 bases out there. David Vine's number, but actually the number's nearly twice as many if you factor in the bases that have closed. And when we're dealing with these carcinogenic forever chemicals, that's important because Germany is littered with closed NATO bases. And so let's keep that in mind before we even start. So let me look at this first screen here. I want to talk about how the use of firefighting foam. You all know, my shtick. But this foam was used for 50 years on some bases. It's still being used, and it runs into the groundwater and into the surface water, and it makes its way into the rivers. So all I've done here is taken the data that I already knew regarding the use of this stuff at various bases. Then I looked at fish data from Germany, and then I went to Google Maps, and then I looked at the rivers, and then I put two and two together and said, Jesus, they're poisoning the fish way beyond the water. And I know in the US that there is a concerted propagandistic effort to get everybody concerned about the drinking water when the fish contamination may be thousands of times greater. So anyway, Kyle River, 200 micrograms per kilogram of this stuff, PFOS. So 200 micrograms per kilogram of PFOS in fish that people regularly eat. Well, I want to turn everything into parts per trillion so that we can bring lots of different figures in together. So we know Harvard University Health and Northeastern University and several academic institutions in the United States and Europe are saying now, if you consume this stuff, PFAS, which is 6,000 of them, but one in particular is PFOS. It's the most dangerous one. And that if you consume more than 1 part per trillion, you could potentially be in trouble, especially women. So, the European Food Safety Administration says that 86% of the PFAS that we have in our bodies, all humans have the stuff in their bodies, by the way, especially Germans, that it comes from the fish. So it's a killer. It's linked to liver, kidney, and testicular cancer, and breast cancer, sorry. It causes severe thyroid problems, autism, asthma, hyperactivity in children. I mean, there's science coming out now that's saying it may be the #1 cause of hyperactivity disorder in kids. And it's really dangerous to women who may be pregnant, and it's linked to increased COVID rates. So, they've been poisoning your fish and you've probably been eating it. So EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, has issued guidance. And I know you all are going to get a little lost in this math, as I do. But I mean, they're saying, look, every week you shouldn't eat any more than 4.4 nanograms per kilogram. It's probably about 100 times more than it ought to be, but we'll go with that, okay? So if somebody weighs 150 pounds, 68 kilos, all right, you get 300 nanograms per week of this stuff, this PFOS stuff in the fish that you eat. So let's say somebody consumes 8 ounces of trout, 0.22 kilograms, and that stuff has 200,000 nanograms per kilogram of PFOS in its fillet. I mean, it's a killer, man. It is, my God, 44,000 nanograms compared to 300. It's like 146 times higher than the European safety guideline for one meal. And This is commonplace throughout Germany. I'll take you through it real quickly. So, EFSA's limit's way too high. But no one's paying any attention. And of course, that's because, your leading industries and your military especially, and it's mostly military here, is the prime pollutant. And they don't want people to know about it because it has damned high liability. So let's just look at one map here, the Kailbach River. It flows just 500 meters east of the runway at Spangdahlem. Sorry for bastardizing your language. It empties into the Somme River less than 5 kilometers away. So the red X is where I have determined the burn pit was. Now these burn pits are usually 200 feet, so I don't know, 60 meters by 3/4 of a meter deep. And they fill it with jet fuel, they light it on fire, and then they put it out with the foams. And they've done that for 30, 40, 50 years at some NATO bases. And the shit drains into the rivers. This is not rocket science. So, the Spingerbach River runs to the east of Spangdahlem, all right? And a German brown trout caught there has 82,000 parts per trillion of PFOS. So we have states now, like New York State last week, they limit the amount of PFOS in parts per trillion. You all in Germany are eating fish with 82,000 parts per trillion. I mean, no one's paying any attention to it. And then I looked at, Bitburg, and I looked at 2 rivers at Bitburg, the Kyle, and the Nims. And damned if you don't have high levels of PFOS in fish in both rivers. 200,000 in Kyle I already mentioned, and 4,500 PFOS in the fillet. So just a little bit more math, okay? And I know from giving these presentations that people hate the math, but I mean, it's part of this, it's science. So it's laughable. The European Union's Water Framework Directive has said, okay, 0.65 parts per trillion. We want to keep it to that. Okay, well, it's laughable. I mean, just in the Kyle River below Bitburg, it's 3,400 parts per trillion. That's 5,000 times over the water framework. So the waters are polluted by NATO, and this PFOS stuff is bioaccumulative, which means it just multiplies and multiplies. So, 200,000 parts per trillion. That would represent, if you have 3,400 parts per trillion of the toxins, a multiplicative factor of 58.8. Hold that, okay? Just remember, the fish are like sponges, and this shit multiplies. PFOS can accumulate in fish thousands of times more than the levels present in the water. So we have a study by the U.S. Air Force Civil Engineers Center, thanks to the FOIA process that no longer exists under the Trump administration. I can tell you about that. They assessed the toxic levels at 10 military bases and found that the median PFOS levels were 2170. So, the 3,400 level for Kyle's kind of in the ballpark. So we have a base in Louisiana with 1,800 parts per trillion, and one little sunfish had 9.3 million parts per trillion of PFOS. So many of the diseases in our societies are caused by this stuff. Now, this gets back to the point that Ludo made about the 800, my gosh, gone but not forgotten. Bitburg, no, this is, 108,000 parts per trillion of PFAS chemicals. And the surface waters next to the airport had 19,100 parts per trillion. So, you have the Paffenbach, the Thalsgraben, and the Buckengraben fishing grounds that are contaminated. I went to another one, the Aller River. Bergen-Hohn, Jesus, what a disaster. Bergen-Hohn is it's a training area, near Shell, and it's about what 40 kilometers north of Hanover. And you know they just blow shit up. I don't know how to put it any more eloquently. So you know, I just don't understand why the German people allow it. But I look at Bergen-Belsen, and its greatest legacy is the PFAS that they're dumping. I mean, they practice that too. And so sometimes there's crashes, and sometimes, you know, there's accidents, and they spray this foam, which of course gets into the water. So fish from 4 rivers: Aller, Elbe, Ems, Weser. You know, scientists looked at bream, eel, and pike perch, and the average, the median, you know, 7,800 parts per trillion. The Ems, which is actually a little further away, had 128,500 parts per trillion in eel. Just think about this next time you eat German fish. I mean, yeah, German industry is also to blame, but most of the contamination comes from military activity. And I know this from a lot of data that we have from California, and I can explain that, but not now. So, you know, let me just pick through a couple more bases, okay? NATO, Ramstein, you know, you got the Moorbach River. It's 538 times more polluted than the EU says is safe. But it's okay, you know, because it's Ramstein. So Ramstein, you know, they get a wink and a nod. Sembach, okay? You know, 1,200 parts per trillion of PFAS coming out of Sembach. Hahn, you know, the Brulbach River near Hahn. It's just pretty amazing when I looked at this one. So I found the burn pit. You can see the burn pit next to the red X. And then I said, Jesus, you know, the river is 200 meters from the former fire training pit. So it wins the prize, you know, because it had 9,300 parts per trillion of PFAS. Anybody want to go fishing in the Brulbach River? Sound like fun? Here's another problem. If you look at Spangdahlem, the sewer treatment plant was found to have PFAS at 31,400 parts per trillion. So, you know, when you go through the sewer process, you know, it's left with sludge. And so if you slather the sludge on your farm fields, then you're going to poison your strawberries and your asparagus and whatever you might be growing. And you can't burn it either. If you burn it, they don't burn. These things put fires out. You got to get the fires up to about 2,000 to 2,100 Fahrenheit in order to destroy it, and most incinerators won't work. You know, and Bushel, B-61s, you know, wherever you have nuclear weapons, you got this stuff. So the rivers near Bushel are poisoned as well. Isn't that lovely? Zweibrücken, all right. So Zweibrücken closed in 91. Yeah, but your waters are poisoned there. And the drinking wells near Zweibrücken are at 6,900 parts per trillion. Remember, you know, Vermont has a regulation that says you can't drink more than 10 parts per trillion of PFOS. Same with New York. States all across the northeast of America are getting in line and putting the stuff in new regulations. Ansbach, there's hope. In Ansbach, officials are fighting back. And they actually, Germans, my God, a German official pointed his finger at the United States military and said that they're hiding the truth. Well, I have a request to try to get the information here. Haven't been able to do it yet. Probably won't until Trump's out of office. But you know, you got well water at Ansbach at 33,270 parts per trillion. We think 1 part per trillion is potentially dangerous. So, you know, just follow the Ansbach story here. And then I'll just, you know, finish up by just saying that the German public just is unaware, as far as I can see. And, you know, they're just in no mood to tango with the U.S. And, you know, there's hope in Ansbach and in Spangdahlem, where they've actually they tried to take the United States to court. over, poisoned water and poisoned sewage. But they were told that they're not allowed. Okay. Germans aren't allowed to sue the United States. So I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Yes.